The year was 1814, and London glittered with the restless brilliance of the season. Beneath the chandeliers of Devonshire House, laughter rang like glass, and the air shimmered with the perfume of roses and ambition. Ladies fanned themselves with ivory grace. Gentlemen exchanged pleasantries sharp as polished steel. It was the night the ton would remember, not for its music, nor its champagne, but for the quiet humiliation of Lady Evelina Hart. She stood at the edge of the ballroom, a vision of composure veiled by sorrow. Her gown, though modest, carried the faint shimmer of silver thread, and her dark curls had been arranged with careful simplicity. She looked every inch the lady she had been raised to be, yet her eyes betrayed the exhaustion of one who has weathered too many whispers. A year ago, she had been the envy of London, spoken of as the future Duchess of Blackwell. Now, she was an afterthought, a tragic figure whose story had become society's favorite cautionary tale. Across the hall, Duke Adrian Blackwell commanded the room with his usual quiet authority. Tall, dark-haired, and striking in his military-cut coat, he embodied the very image of English nobility, distant, powerful, unreachable. His gloved hand rested upon the arm of his new wife, the heiress whose dowry had rescued his family's crumbling fortune. To the crowd, he was a man of duty. To Evelina, he was the ghost who had shattered her heart beneath the winter moon. There had been a promise once. In the gardens of his ancestral estate, he had taken her hand and spoken with that rare gentleness he reserved for no one else. When the season ends, he had whispered, the world will know you as mine. She had believed him, foolishly, entirely. But duty had summoned him elsewhere, to title, to wealth, to a woman whose name opened doors Evelina could never touch. The wedding had been swift, the gossip merciless, and she, left to face the smirking pity of those who had always doubted her worth. Now, as the orchestra swelled, every note seemed to echo her disgrace. A cluster of debutantes nearby tittered behind their fans. Poor Miss Hart, one murmured, feigning sympathy. I suppose even a duke must choose wisely. Evelina heard, and her smile did not waver. Years of training in deportment had taught her the art of stillness, the strength in silence. Yet beneath her composed exterior, something fragile splintered a little more. Her only friend, Lady Amelia Worthing, approached with hesitant kindness. You should not have come, dearest, she whispered. These people live for cruelty. Evelina's reply was soft but steady. If I do not come, they will say I am hiding. Let them see that I endure. She lifted her chin, her pride the last jewel she possessed. Then, across the polished floor, Adrian turned. For the briefest moment, their eyes met. The distance between them seemed unbearable, measured not in steps but in betrayal. His expression flickered, something unreadable passing behind the mask of indifference. Perhaps regret, perhaps shame. Whatever it was, he turned away before the truth could settle. Evelina's heart gave a single, traitorous beat. That he could look upon her so calmly, after all he had promised, was a cruelty greater than gossip. She imagined confronting him, demanding why her love had been weighed and found unprofitable. Yet what words could undo the contract of marriage? What dignity could survive such a plea? The waltz began, and couples moved to the floor in perfect symmetry. She watched as Adrian guided his wife with practiced grace. Their movements were elegant, their harmony exquisite. It was the very life he had chosen, the life she had once been promised. Around her, the world blurred, the music swelling into a cruel reminder of what she had lost. When the dance ended, a footman brushed past her, nearly knocking a folded paper from her hand. She caught it, startled. The seal was broken, a remnant from earlier that day. Her mother's handwriting urged her to return to the country, to forget what cannot be repaired. But Evelina could not forget. She had come tonight for closure, perhaps even defiance. And yet, as the night unfolded, she found only the sting of remembrance. At the far end of the hall, a pair of matrons exchanged glances. Do you suppose she still loves him? One whispered. The other smirked. Oh, my dear, women like her always do. Evelina turned away, her cheeks burning, her throat tight with unspent tears. She longed for air. Slipping from the crowd, she moved through the gilded doors and into the corridor beyond. The marble floor gleamed under her footsteps, echoing faintly. There alone, she allowed her composure to fracture. The mask slipped. Her breathing trembled. In the silence, she thought of the letter he had sent months ago. His apology, unopened, still sealed in her desk drawer. What could it say now that would matter? Words were easy. Promises were currency men spent too freely. A faint gust drifted through an open window, carrying with it the muffled laughter of the ballroom. The sound struck her like a memory of another evening, another dance, when his hand had rested at her waist and his gaze had held nothing but devotion. She could almost hear his voice again, low and certain. I would rather be poor with you than powerful without you. How false that vow had proven. Behind her, footsteps echoed faintly. She turned, expecting perhaps Amelia, but found only an unfamiliar servant bearing a silver tray. For you, my lady, he said, offering a small envelope sealed in black wax. Her pulse quickened as she recognized the crest, the Blackwell falcon. She hesitated, fingers trembling, then took it. The servant bowed and vanished. Evelina stared at the letter, its seal gleaming in the dim light. For a long moment she did nothing. Then, with deliberate calm, she crossed to the nearest fireplace. Flames licked eagerly at the logs, their light casting shadows, like dancing ghosts. She held the letter above them, her jaw set. This, she murmured to no one, is the last you will take from me. The parchment caught, curling into ember. She watched until it was ash, until every trace of his words was consumed. Only then did she exhale, a sound closer to grief than relief. The weight within her chest remained, but something inside had hardened too. From the ballroom came a sudden burst of applause, the orchestra beginning anew. Life continued, indifferent to her heartbreak. She straightened her shoulders, gathering the remnants of her pride, and turned toward the stairs. Each step echoed like a vow. She would never again be defined by his absence. Outside, her carriage waited beneath the pale glow of street lamps. Frost traced the windows, the air sharp with winter's promise. As she climbed in, the city stretched before her, vast, glittering, unfeeling. The door closed, the wheels began to turn, and Evelina Hart vanished into the London night. Behind her, in the ballroom she had fled, Duke Adrian Blackwell stood momentarily alone near the grand staircase, his gaze fixed upon the doorway where she had disappeared. He said nothing, but the silence around him deepened, as if even the chandeliers held their breath. The night had ended, but something had begun, an ache that would not fade with dawn. And though neither of them knew it yet, this was not their ending, but the quiet stirring of a reckoning that would demand everything both had left to give. Winter settled over London in 1815, like a veil of mourning. The city's grandeur persisted, gas lamps glowing through fog, carriages rattling past the grand facades of Mayfair, but beneath its polish ran a quieter rhythm of regret. In a modest townhouse on Grosvenor Street, Lady Evelina Hart lived almost unseen. Once the ornament of London society, she now existed in its shadow, caring for a widowed aunt and venturing out only for brief errands or church services. Her days were quiet, her nights long. Yet even solitude is not safe from memory. Each morning, when the frost glazed the window panes, she would recall another winter, a gentler one, when Adrian Blackwell's laughter had filled her world. She had tried to forget him, as any sensible woman must. She burned his letters, avoided the parks they had walked through, and trained herself to breathe evenly when his name appeared in conversation. Yet forgetting is an art few master. His absence had become a presence all its own. London, ever fond of rumor, had not forgotten her either. A year was enough to dull curiosity, but not to erase scandal. Poor Lady Evelina, they would sigh, as if pity were a kindness and not another blade. Still she endured. The world could whisper. She had nothing left to lose. Or so she believed, until the black carriage appeared. It was first seen one fog-drenched morning, drawn by two dark horses, its windows curtained and its crest unmistakable. The silver falcon of House Blackwell. The sight made the neighborhood stir. Servants paused at doorsteps. Curtains twitched. The vehicle lingered outside Evelina's modest home for several minutes before moving on. She saw it herself only once, through the parlor window, and her heart clenched so fiercely she gripped the sill to steady herself. He was back in London. The newspapers had reported his return weeks earlier. Duke Adrian Blackwell, widowed these 6 months, master again of Blackwell Hall and its vast estates. His wife, the Duchess Margaret, had died giving birth to a stillborn heir. The ton mourned appropriately, though with thin sincerity. Some whispered that the union had been loveless from the first. Others claimed he had grown colder, more withdrawn, a man haunted by specters none could name. Evelina had refused to listen. Whatever remorse he bore was not hers to console. Yet as the days passed, the carriage returned, sometimes at dawn, sometimes under the cover of dusk. Never did it stop, never did a letter come, and yet its silent presence unsettled her. Her aunt noticed. "Child," she said one evening as they sat before the hearth, "there are eyes upon this house. Perhaps you should write to him, demand he cease this nonsense." Evelina's voice was calm, but her fingers tightened around her teacup. "I owe him no words, aunt, nor does he deserve them." But Adrian was a man who had spent a lifetime commanding what others thought impossible. Grief had hollowed him, yes, but it had also stripped him of pretense. For the first time, duty's chains hung loose. He moved through drawing rooms and parliament halls like a figure carved from marble, respected, feared, but utterly alone. When he spoke, it was with measured civility. When he smiled, it never reached his eyes. Only one thing disturbed that mask, the sound of her name. He heard it at a gallery one afternoon, murmured by 2 society matrons examining a portrait. Lady Evelina Hart, was she not once to be his bride? "Indeed," replied the other, lowering her voice. "They say she has taken a solitude. Some women never recover from such disgrace." He turned away sharply, the echo of her name burning through his composure. That night, restless and unslept, he took pen and parchment, but no letter could bear the weight of what he wished to say. Words failed him, words that once came so easily. Instead, he chose a token. The next morning, a bouquet of white lilies appeared upon Evelina's doorstep, fresh, flawless, their stems bound with black ribbon. There was no card, but she knew. The scent filled her small hall, delicate and devastating. Her maid found her standing before them, expression unreadable. "Shall I take them, my lady?" she asked. Evelina hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, burn them." By afternoon, the gesture had become a story. Servants spoke, gossip spread, and within days, London was alight with speculation. The Duke had sent flowers to the woman he had ruined. Perhaps he meant to restore her, perhaps to torment her. Drawing rooms buzzed with theories, each more scandalous than the last. The irony was cruel. The very man who had once destroyed her reputation now revived it with his attention. For Adrian, the scandal mattered little. He was long past caring what society thought. Each rumor only confirmed what he already knew, that he could not erase her from his conscience. He rode past her house again and again, telling himself he merely sought courage to speak. But courage, like forgiveness, cannot be compelled. One evening, he encountered Lady Amelia Worthing at a dinner hosted by Lord Castlemere. Amelia, loyal to Evelina still, regarded him with thinly veiled disdain. "You should leave her in peace, your grace," she said coolly. "Haven't you taken enough from her?" Adrian met her gaze, without flinching. "Peace," he said quietly, "is precisely what I hope to give her." She turned away, murmuring, "And yet you bring only storms." The next morning, Evelina received an envelope sealed with the royal insignia. It was an invitation to the Prince Regent's winter masquerade, a spectacle of music, politics, and diamonds, where appearances mattered more than truth. Her first instinct was to decline. Such gatherings were no place for ghosts. But then she noticed a signature at the bottom. It was faint, almost hidden, but unmistakable. A friend who once betrayed you. Her breath caught. The invitation trembled in her hands. There was no question who had sent it. What remained uncertain was his purpose. Was it remorse, or arrogance, or the final cruelty of a man who wished her to forgive him publicly? That evening, as snow began to fall over the city, she stood by the window watching the flakes drift past the glass. The black carriage was there again, waiting motionless under the lamplight. She did not draw the curtain. Let him see her, if he wished. Let him look upon what he had made. In the dim glow of her parlor, she whispered to the silence, "You may haunt me, Adrian, but I will not yield to your ghost." Outside, unseen by her, the Duke sat within the carriage, gloved hands clenched upon his knees. Through the frost-dimmed window, he caught the faint outline of her figure, still, graceful, unbroken. For the first time in a year, he allowed himself to hope that forgiveness might not be beyond reach. The carriage rolled away into the snow, leaving behind a trail of whispers that would carry through London's drawing rooms by dawn. Some called it scandal, others called it fate, but to those who knew the story's heart, it was something rarer still, the stirring of a love once buried, now daring to breathe again. And far above the city, beneath the pale winter sky, the bells of St. George's tolled the hour, solemn and slow, as if marking not time, but the beginning of a reckoning long overdue. The night of the Prince Regent's winter masquerade unfurled like a vision painted in gold and shadow. Carlton House blazed with candlelight, its mirrored halls glittering with jewels, silk, and whispered ambition. Every lord and lady of consequence had gathered beneath the domed ceiling, their laughter rising in delicate ripples above the swell of violins. Masks of velvet and lace concealed faces, but not intentions. In London's most dazzling court, disguise was only another form of truth. Lady Evelina Hart stood at the threshold, uncertain whether to enter. Her gown, a deep blue satin that caught the light like midnight water, shimmered softly with every breath. A silver mask framed her eyes, and for once, anonymity felt like armor. The invitation clutched in her hand bore no name, but his meaning was everywhere, in the lily's scent, the carriage's shadow, the silence that had followed her for months. She should have burned it, as she had burned his letter. Yet here she was, her heart betraying her reason once more. Inside, the air was warm, perfumed with orange blossom and wax. The orchestra played a waltz of measured elegance. Evelina descended the grand staircase slowly, aware of the glances that followed. She was a ghost returned to the scene of her ruin, and London had always adored a resurrection. She moved through the crowd with careful grace, offering nods, brief smiles, and polite distance. Beneath her composure ran a current of fear, fear that she might see him, and worse, that she might wish to. Adrian Blackwell watched her from across the ballroom. He recognized her instantly, though half the women in attendance wore similar gowns and masks. There was no mistaking the quiet dignity of her posture, the slight tilt of her chin, the poise that refused to yield even beneath scrutiny. The sight struck him with such force that he forgot to breathe. It had been a year since he last looked upon her face without shame. Now the sight undid him utterly. He had not come to reclaim what he had lost. He had come because living without her had become unbearable. He moved through the crowd with silent precision, nodding absently to acquaintances, ignoring their murmured condolences about his late wife. Each step brought him closer to her until at last, standing just behind her, he spoke, softly, so only she could hear. "Lady Evelina." The name fell from his lips like a prayer. She turned, startled. Her gaze met his, and for an instant the world narrowed to the space between them. His mask was simple, black and unadorned, but his eyes, those dark, contrite eyes, needed no disguise. "My lord," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened around her fan. "I did not expect to find you here." "Nor I you," he replied, though it was a lie. He had hoped for nothing else. "I feared you would not come." "Then you should have wished it," she answered. "My presence brings only gossip, and you, of all men, have had your fill of that." He flinched at the truth of it. "Evelina," he said, dropping all formality, "there is something I must say, something long withheld." She hesitated, torn between pride and curiosity. "Then say it quickly, before the music ends." He offered his hand. "Dance with me. Let the world see nothing but civility, and let me speak while we are still permitted the illusion of grace." For a heartbeat she did not move. Then, against her better judgment, she placed her gloved hand in his. The touch was electric, familiar and foreign at once. He led her onto the floor, and as the waltz began, the crowd seemed to dissolve around them. The chandeliers shimmered overhead, scattering fragments of light across their faces. Neither spoke at first. The rhythm carried them through practiced motions. Step, turn, retreat, advance. His hand at her waist trembled faintly, betraying the composure of a man long accustomed to control. At last he said, "You must despise me. I would, were I you." Evelina's gaze remained fixed on some distant point. "Despise you? No. To despise requires energy I no longer possess. I merely remember." He swallowed. "Then let me tell you what memory cannot. I married her because I was told it was my duty. Our fortune was failing, my title burdened with debts. I thought I could endure anything but disgrace. I was wrong. Disgrace is living each day knowing I destroyed the only soul who ever believed I could be better." The words hung between them, heavy as confession. Evelina's breath quickened. "You seek absolution, then?" she asked. "I seek no forgiveness I do not deserve," he replied. "I seek only to be heard." She turned her gaze to him at last, and he saw tears gathering like light behind her mask. "You speak as if remorse were love. But love, my lord, would have defied your duty." His voice softened. "I thought love could wait, that reason might quiet the heart. But every day since, I have lived in silence and found you there still. You haunt me not as punishment, but as proof I once knew happiness." Her composure wavered. "You forget. I too have lived in that silence. It was not haunted, it was hollow. Do you know what it is to wake each morning and wish to unremember someone?" "I do," he said. "Every day." The music slowed, the final notes shimmering through the hall. He stopped dancing but did not release her hand. The crowd had begun to notice, the murmurs spreading like ripples in water. He did not care. "Evelina," he whispered, "I would give all I possess to undo what I have done." She stepped back, trembling, her mask catching the candlelight. "And what would that make me, Adrian? A prize returned, a penance performed." Her voice broke, soft but steady. "You mistake regret for devotion." Before he could reply, the conductor raised his bow for the next waltz, and the crowd surged between them. He reached out, but she was already gone, her gown disappearing into the shifting sea of color. Adrian stood motionless as laughter and music swelled around him. For a moment he considered pursuit, but he knew it would only deepen her pain. He had spoken too late. Evelina reached the edge of the ballroom, heart hammering, breath shallow. She leaned against a marble pillar, trying to still the tremor in her hands. Behind her mask, tears traced silent paths down her cheeks. His words had awakened something she had buried too deeply to name. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the faintest stirring of what might have been hope. Above them, the chandeliers burned brighter, their flames mirrored in every crystal. And somewhere in that glittering light, two hearts, though parted, began once more to beat in painful, undeniable rhythm. The next evening arrived wrapped in mist, the city shimmering beneath lanterns that glowed like faint promises through the fog. Vauxhall Gardens, famed for its music and scandal, pulsed with life. Gentlemen in tailored coats and ladies draped in silks wandered among pavilions where laughter mingled with the scent of wine and winter roses. Yet beneath the merriment ran a current of rumor, sharper than any frost. The Duke of Blackwell had danced with Lady Evelina Hart. London's cruelest love story had come alive again. Evelina had not meant to attend. After the masquerade, she had sworn never to see him again. Her heart was too raw, her pride too fragile. But fate, or perhaps defiance, drove her there. Her friend Lady Amelia had insisted, "You cannot let the world write your ending, my dear. If you must be seen, let it be by your own choosing." So Evelina came, veiled in calm dignity, her gown of soft ivory glinting under the lantern light. The garden's music swelled around her, yet she felt none of its joy. Every sound, every murmur, was haunted by his voice. Adrian arrived later, his carriage stopping at the garden's edge. He had spent the night after the masquerade sleepless, replaying every word she had spoken, every wound she had reopened. There had been honesty in her anger, and it had stripped him bare. He had lived too long obeying duty, too long fearing disgrace, and now he feared only one thing, losing her forever. His steps were purposeful, his face drawn but resolute. For the first time, He did not come as a duke, but as a man who had finally learned humility. The evening glittered around them, yet when their eyes met across the crowd, the world seemed to pause. Evelina froze mid-step, her fan half raised. Adrian inclined his head slightly, an unspoken plea for a moment of her time. She hesitated. Pride urged her to turn away, but something deeper, curiosity, perhaps compassion, kept her rooted. He approached slowly, aware of the dozens of eyes that followed his every movement. The murmur of gossip grew louder. To speak to her here, in so public a setting, was to risk everything. His reputation, her fragile peace, the fragile order of their world. Yet for once, he no longer cared. "Lady Evelina," he began softly, bowing. "You look well." "Do I?" Her voice was cool. "I must thank solitude for its tonic properties." He almost smiled. "Then solitude has served you better than duty ever served me." A flicker passed through her gaze, something like pity, quickly buried. "You should not speak to me here. The world already makes enough sport of us." "Let it," he said quietly. "Let them see truth for once." She blinked, startled by the defiance in his tone. "Truth, my lord? Or spectacle?" "Both, if need be," he replied. "I have hidden behind silence too long. I will not let another lie define what I feel for you." Her breath caught. "Adrian, please." But he was already turning toward the crowd. The music had softened, as though sensing the moment. Conversations faltered. Every gaze shifted toward them, the disgraced lady and the widowed duke, bound by history and heartbreak. He looked upon her, not with the cold detachment of a nobleman, but with the sincerity of a man stripped of pretense. His voice carried across the pavilion, steady and rich. "A year ago, I broke the heart of the only woman who ever truly knew me. I called it duty. I called it sacrifice. But I see now it was cowardice dressed in noble reason. I thought love could wait until my life was in order. I was wrong. My life will never be in order without her." The garden fell utterly still. The violins faltered, then ceased altogether. Evelina's pulse thundered in her ears. Her hand trembled at her side. Adrian took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "Lady Evelina Hart," he said, his voice lower now, almost tender. "My heart beats for you still. It has from the moment I lost you, and it will until I no longer draw a breath." For a moment, the world itself seemed suspended. No one moved. No one dared breathe. It was as though time had paused to witness the undoing of two proud souls. Evelina stood frozen, every emotion warring within her, shock, anger, longing, disbelief. She wanted to flee, to silence the ache rising in her chest. Yet when she spoke, her voice was soft, trembling but clear. "You speak as though words could mend what your silence destroyed." "They cannot," he said, "but perhaps my honesty can." She studied him, really studied him, for the first time since his return. There was no arrogance now, no cold mask of privilege. He looked older, wearier, yet more human than she had ever known him. In his eyes she saw a remorse not born of performance, but of a soul finally stripped bare. "Do you think," she whispered, "that love so wounded can live again?" He hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering his voice until only she could hear. "It already does. It has never ceased." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "And if I forgive you, Adrian, what becomes of me then? Another scandal? Another sacrifice?" "No," he answered. "You become free. Free to hate me, to love me, to walk away if that is your choice. I seek no promise from you, only your truth." The sincerity in his tone disarmed her. The world seemed to recede, its noise distant, its judgment irrelevant. For the first time, she saw not the Duke of Blackwell, but the man she had loved before titles and consequence had destroyed them both. Her defenses wavered, not in weakness, but in recognition of shared pain. "I have lived an entire year pretending not to feel what I feel now," she said quietly. "You took my trust, my reputation, my peace, and yet, even in your absence, you never left me." He exhaled, a sound between relief and sorrow. "Then let me stay now, not as penance, but as a man who would rather face ruin than live without your forgiveness." Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in too long, she allowed herself to feel, fully, dangerously, beautifully. Around them, whispers swelled. The Prince Regent himself, observing from a distance, raised an amused brow. Yet no one interrupted. Even London, cruel and curious, seemed held by something sacred. Evelina lifted her chin. "If I let you stand beside me now, Adrian, there will be no turning back." "Then let us not turn back," he said simply. For a moment longer, she held his gaze, and then, slowly, deliberately, she extended her hand. He took it, bowing low, and pressed a reverent kiss to her gloved fingers. The simple gesture, performed beneath the eyes of all society, shattered the last wall between them. The orchestra, sensing the signal, began again. The melody was slow and tremulous, a waltz that felt like forgiveness set to music. He drew her gently into the dance, his touch careful, his eyes never leaving hers. Around them, the crowd watched in awed silence. When the final note faded, he whispered, "Whatever they say tomorrow, let them. I will not hide again." Evelina's voice was soft, almost inaudible. "Then let us give them something worth remembering." And as lanterns flickered above and the first snow began to fall upon the garden paths, they danced once more. Two souls long divided, now bound not by duty or fear, but by the quiet, defiant truth of love rediscovered. The room, for one timeless heartbeat, was silent. Then the applause began, not cruel, not mocking, but reverent. For even among England's finest, something unspoken had shifted. In a world ruled by decorum and debt, hearts had dared to speak, and in doing so, had found their way home.